it is kind of trendy right now to really hear about, like, there are these huge differences between males and females with what they need as far as like their training goes, their eating patterns, even their hydration, so many different points, for males versus females. Do you want to speak to that a little bit?
Sure. God, I'm going to get so much hate mail for this. My bias is I don't think there's that many differences. Now, The massive caveat is, are there differences between genders? Of course there is. Are there different hormones? Yes. Is there physiologic differences? Percent? And you could very rightly argue, and I would 100% agree, we have way too little data on women. Data we have so far, which again is very limited, in general, it would say there's not that much difference.
Welcome to Influence to Death, your guide for navigating the wild world of wellness influencing.
Hi, and welcome to Influence to Death. My name is Victoria Lafont. I am one half of your hosting team. Hannah is on vacation right now. But today we have an awesome guest. I would say our favorite guest.
Well, that's so nice.
So this is Dr. Mike T. Nelson. You all might recognize him from the keto episode, and he graciously agreed to come on today and talk to me about cardiovascular health and aerobic training. Specifically, we're going to talk about for females. But the reason that I wanted him to come on anyway is because he has a new course that totally caught my eye. I think you sent out an email that, wait, I have to find the subject line of this email. As a copywriter, I was like, I appreciate this so much. Okay, so hang on, I have it still in my inbox. Yeah, it says, how to recover like a beast in a world that sleeps like a pigeon on meth. That was the subject line. And so I was like, yes, I will be reading this. And then he talked about this new course that you created called Flexible Meathead Cardio Course, which was also a fabulous name. And so it just like got my wheels spinning. And I was like, yeah, my husband and I are totally meatheads. I think Andrew gets more cardiovascular fitness than I do from aerobic training, but I struggle with it. And so anyway, it just made me be like, please come on and talk to us about this. And we can focus on that really for females if there are any differences, but just to kind of generally talk about like what's the deal with people who are focused on resistance training, cardiovascularly, what should they pay attention to? I'm sure you have like a laundry list. Anyway, Dr. Mike, I don't think we read bios the last time. It's not something that people often enjoy. Most people are like, could you do that like before, like we come on, like do like an intro for me. But I feel like maybe to kind of tell people a little bit more about who you are. Is that okay with you?
Yeah. I mean, did you want me to go or?
Yeah, I mean, if you want to go for it, yes, please tell us more about yourself. And then I'll link in the show notes to your about page on your website, which I want people to check out anyway. So
thank you.
Yes, go for it.
Yeah, the short version is I spent 18 years in college full time, which I would not recommend anyone. So I did a Bachelor of Arts in Natural Science, did some postgraduate work in engineering, did a master's in mechanical engineering, biomechanics. My thesis was more on heat transfer, so published research on a big gigahertz microwave transmitter to zap monkey heads.
That's a subject line.
Yeah, which was so classified at the time, they didn't tell me it was classified. But I'm like, what does Brooks Air Force Base in Texas care about collision avoidance systems on cars? I'm like, whatever, you're going to pay for me to finish my master's and I need a thesis. So, okay, I'll do this thing. And what they wanted was it would later in the media, they called it, basically, it's a non-invasive technology that you have this big transmitter, but it's in the gigahertz range. So the higher frequency you go, the less penetration depth you have. So if you had a microwave that was in the gigahertz range, you would just burn the outside of the food and the inside would be completely frozen. Mm-hmm. So penetration depth is like a couple millimeters. But all your sympathetic nerve endings are right at the top part of your skin. Like you just touch your skin, it's super sensitive. So what they found is it lights up all those nerve endings and it feels like your skin is being burnt by a light bulb. But some research I did, and they confirmed it on some humans and actually some monkeys, showed that there is no deep tissue heating effect. It just feels like it because the penetration depth is so shallow. And so what this does is it causes people to move out of the way of the beam. And so the military used this, which is called the active denial system. It's now been declassified as a way of non-lethal crowd control. So after 9/11, every branch of the military wanted it. So they had several different versions, and it never really got used a whole lot because I did a presentation for DARPA many years ago. DARPA is a Defense Advanced Research Project Agency. I was doing some stuff there with metabolic flexibility, but that's the group of the military that does, like, they invented GPS, like cell phone technology. Like a lot of the stuff we have now was originally DARPA projects. And I'm talking to one of the guys there, and I'm asking him, I'm like, hey, we're just talking. I told him what I did. And he's like, oh, yeah, I was the operator of one of those. I'm like, what? Really? He's like, yeah. That's all I'm asking him about it. And I'm like, what? How did it work? He's like, oh, it worked really well. He's like, you don't want to be in that beam. It hurts like hell. And people, move. And I said, well, what if someone doesn't get out of the way? Like, what do you do then? He's like, we shoot them. He's like, because if they stay in the beam and they're coming at you, they are fully intent upon doing you harm. Like, that is not a normal response. So we eliminate the threat.
That's the eliminate the threat.
Yeah. I was like, oh. And I asked him, I said, well, is this used a lot in the military? He's like, no, they're not so good with non-lethal methods. Like, they don't really know what to do with it a lot because it's just one of those things that was tested and no one's really sure how to use it. And then it was supposed to be used more for crowd control, but the media had different names for it, like death ray and, all these cutesy names for it, that if they use it on a group of people, it just has such a bad connotation that the bad press around it is just not so good. So so side note, was never really used a lot. I don't know if it's still being used, but I've further talked to another guy who, he didn't say what he knew, but he did a lot of very covert type stuff and said, well, all I can say is the military has played around with just about every frequency and every other thing known to man for different, things. You can look up Havana syndrome and all sorts of crazy stuff from the Russians. And yeah, so it's just a whole area that sounds like complete sci-fi fiction. Like, it doesn't sound like it's real. It sounds like, tinfoil hat, like weirdo stuff. But I mean, I published that research in 1999.
And you were like in a lab, like shooting monkeys with this high frequency beam.
So I did a computer generated model because what the military wanted to know is that there's so many different permutations of, do we need, how big of a transmitter? What distance? Like, do we need a sweating monkey? Do we need a hairy monkey? Do we need a big hairy monkey in front of a fan? Does a sweating monkey in front of the hairy monkey? Like, so when you have a computer generated model and you could validate the model, then I think I ran, what did I run? Like 79 different permutations of these, variables and stuff. And then you can narrow it down to, okay, let's probably test, these couple things and see what's going on. So,
oh my God. So, okay, what this reminds me of is actually when I was in sports nutrition, which is where I encountered your work for the first time.
Oh yeah, that's right.
Totally. And so it just happened that Dr. Sharp extended the due date for our research paper, which gave me time to go take this course in remote viewing with this guy named John Vanco.
Oh, you did? How was that?
It was exactly what you said, where it's like, it sounds like sci-fi, but then you get into it and you're like, this is actually legit. And he basically described to us, and I think he's telling the truth, that it was at one point used in the US military, and then it eventually became declassified. So he could now teach the course to the public. So we were all like, what? It just sounded crazy, but he taught these guys how to remote view. And so I guess there's that movie, like Men Staring at Goats.
Oh, yeah.
And it's like, it really is based on, like, there was a program that taught guys in the military how to do remote viewing, which is this sort of like psychic adjacent skill that you can teach people. But yeah, I mean, this is a whole different topic, but as you're talking, I'm like, yeah, I bet there's all kinds of, like different programs.
Yeah. So DARPA started, I believe, I could get the dates wrong, started funding that, I think in the 70s. And then they kept funding it. I think they, air quotes, stopped funding it in 1998, I believe. And they said that, we didn't find anything. So the rumors are, again, who knows if this is true or not, is, okay, if you didn't find anything, why'd you study it for 30 years-ish? Right. And then you just say, nope, didn't find anything. So the rumors are that they still use it. They don't know how to do it, that it's been more classified now, and that they found some people who were better at this. And you hear some weird stories. And if you listen to the interviews of the people who do the remote viewing, it's not like they can see something exactly, but they were more accurate than they were not accurate. You know, it wasn't like, well, I can predict the future and tell you what's going on, but there's some crazy stories of things that they talked about and symbols they drew and stuff like that, that it does make you go, oh, I don't know, man.
I know. That's exactly how I felt. Yeah. And I'm trying to remember, John, actually, he has a website that my friend designed, John Vanco.
Oh, wow.
It's actually, the guy who designed it has also been on the podcast. My friend Jameson, he's an illustrator and does some web dev stuff. I don't even know if it's still public, but he's a really interesting dude, and I guess he still teaches remote viewing classes. So if anybody's interested in that,
that's wild.
But thanks, Dr. Sharp, for extending the deadline. That's the only reason I was able. Okay, so then how did you get from that into what you're doing now? Like, what was the progression?
Yeah, so along the way, like I started lifting when I was my first year of college, so 17, because I got crushed by the empty bar in high school, my junior year of college, like doing the bench press. Like I was the same height I am now, like 6'3", weighed like 156 pounds, like when I entered college my freshman year. So I was like a large eel-shaped rake, person. And thought maybe I should do some lifting. Maybe this would be beneficial for me. And took a PE class on it. And the instructor shows up the first day and he's like, all right, I'm going to teach you about weight training. I'm like, oh, yes, this is so cool. He looks around and he goes, some of you need to lose weight. And then he points at me and he goes, and holy crap, some of you need to gain weight. And then he disappeared. Like it was the TA just took attendance after that. Like he didn't teach us anything. I was like, oh, man. So I started taking anatomy and physiology. So I did my undergrad. St. Scholastica was one of the few colleges at an undergrad level that you actually got new cadavers every quarter. So I took that as an elective. We got to learn anatomy and physiology from one of the top instructors in the world. We got to see all the pro sections. And so I just started taking more anatomy and physiology stuff. So I went to Michigan Tech. I enrolled in a 400 level exercise phys class, like just for fun. I actually had maxed out all my credits, and I went to the professor and I'm like, hey man, I just want to take your class. Can you sign me in? And he looks at me and he goes, you have like none of the you've never taken a single exercise phys class in your life. I'm like, nope. He's like, do you need credit? I'm like, nope, I don't care about credit. He's like, well, technically I can't sign you in because you have none of the prereqs and you're already maxed out. But he's like, if you show up Monday, Wednesday, and Friday at 10:30, I won't kick you out of the class. I was like, oh, perfect.
Awesome. And but you were studying engineering at that time?
Yeah, so I was doing mechanical engineering. I actually did what's called solid mechanics, which is the advanced study of how shit breaks. And initially I was doing internal bone fixation. Okay. I could not get funding to save my life. And I was like, oh, man, what am I going to do? Like I invested all this time and I'm 5 years into it. And I went over to the Center for Biomedical Engineering, and that's when this guy's like, hey, we got this thing on heat transfer. It'll fund you, so you'll get money. I'm like, great, I can finish it because I'd maxed out all my loans and everything. And he's like, the downside is it's on heat transfer. Heat transfer. I'm like, I took thermal 1 and 2, but I didn't take heat transfer 1 because you can skip some of the advanced requirements if you're not in that particular area because you're going to do your master's in it anyway. So you just need to fulfill like 90% of the requirements. And I'm like, okay, but I need money. He's like, here's the book on heat transfer. You have 2 weeks over Christmas. I enrolled you in conduction heat transfer to start in January. Like, figure it out. I was like, oh, shit.
Awesome.
So I had to drop.
Merry Christmas.
Yeah. I had to drop the conduction heat transfer class because he failed to tell me that there actually is more math after you get a minor in mathematics beyond Calc 1, 2, 3, 4, differential equations 1, 2, and linear algebra. There's a thing called Bessel equations that was a prereq for the class, but he forgot to tell me that. So I'm just sitting there like struggling, going, what the hell are these people talking about? Eventually I ended up dropping the class, but I still had to learn the material, so I had to still sit there every day and try to figure it out.
Oh my God.
I don't recommend any of that stuff.
No, that sounds horrible. But it's an interesting trend that I've seen in wellness where a lot of some of the people I respect the most have this engineering background, and then they come in and they're like, they have like a brain that understands the body like an engineer. So it's interesting to see that crossover.
Yeah. And it's just and I didn't know it at the time. I just realized it's like a different way of looking at stuff. Like physiology, my pet peeve with physiology is that in general, you're not taught a systems point of view ever. Like it's kind of becoming a little bit more sexy now, but when you're an engineer, you realize you have to think about the whole system. Like you may have been working on a small part, but you can't just not pay attention to everything else. So it's kind of ingrained that everything is just a logical progression of equations and more of a systematic view of stuff. So I just assumed that that's how people studied physiology, because I didn't know any damn different. And then you get done, and like when I was doing my PhD, the running joke was like no one in there had any advanced math. So that's how I got variability with heart rate variability and metabolic flexibility, because my advisor walks in, he's like, oh, you new math boy, whatever, these are your projects now, because they have advanced math. And you realize, oh, even at a PhD level in exercise phys, like I don't even think you take calculus. You know, maybe Calc 1, maybe Calc 2, and that's it. So HRV was started back in the 60s by the Russian cosmonauts. So it's not new technology, but trying to explain variability analysis to someone who doesn't have a background in math, it's a difficult thing, because it's not a simple concept that we use a lot in just day-to-day living. Like you think of averages, you think linearly, you know, but trying to think of what I call all the bad engineering words, which is all physiology. It's anisotropic, it's asymmetric, it has high amounts of variability. Very few things are simple and linear, like almost nothing. Like heart rate, maybe during exercise. There's just not a lot of examples, but it's hard to think that way because the human brain just thinks linearly and very visually based. So it's this kind of weird little bit of a mismatch.
It's super interesting. I mean, for whatever reason, like it makes so much sense to me, but I've like often joked that I have like a non-linear, illogical way of thinking.
Oh, that's probably good.
Totally ask my husband about that. So like maybe that's why I'm drawn to physiology so much. Okay. And then I just want to make sure kind of people understand, then you got your PhD, you studied metabolic flexibility. Is that right?
Yeah, I did 3 years in the biomedical engineering department because I thought, oh, I'll go back to school. I'll get a PhD in biomed. I was working at a med tech company for cardiovascular pacemakers, defibrillators for a while. And I'm like, well, another master's is probably not that useful. And so it took me 2 years to get into the PhD program for biomedical. The funny story with that is I would kept turning my application and they would just I'd never hear back from them. And so I started getting annoyed, and I'm like, okay, I finally figured out after 18 phone calls who was the guy who had to decide. And I started literally just sitting outside of his office, like waiting for him to show up. Because they wouldn't not let me in, but they just wouldn't give me an answer. And so this went on for like 18 months. Finally find the guy in his office, explain to who I am. I come in, he's like, oh, okay, brr. Like, I don't know. And he's like, I don't know where your file is. I don't know. There's just shit everywhere in his office. And for some reason, I was just kind of pissed off, and I looked at this purple folder buried at the bottom of his desk, and I jokingly said, oh, is it that one? Because it's like buried below a pile of books. He pulls it out and goes, son of a bitch, it is. He's like looking at it, he goes, your GRE, your math score, is this a typo?
Oh my gosh.
For the GRE, they told me just walk in and take it. You did engineering, you're fine. So I was trying to solve all the math problems that you can't solve on the GRE. You have to figure out which ones are not there. But he's like, your scores are the inverse of everyone we've ever had here. Your math scores are low, but your logic and writing skills are off the chart. So technically my score was still high enough, it was just the inverse of everyone else. So he let me in on a probationary basis. I had to, you know, stay there for like a year and a half and do well. And yeah, but I left there because, again, I didn't want to do more advanced math. Paradoxically, then stop that, start in the Department of Exercise Physiology, Kinesiology, which means you have to start all the way over from ground zero again. And the first day I get, projects on heart rate variability and metabolic flexibility because they were using variability analysis in order to figure them out. And then that took 7 years full time to finish.
Dr. Mike. Okay. So yeah, you got the chops.
Yeah, if anyone's listening, like, don't do that path. I would not recommend it whatsoever.
It's amazing though. I mean, I feel like you have a unique view of the human body that most people probably don't have because you, for better or worse, went down that path. I mean, I think like, doesn't Harry Idner, I think he was an engineer, he's kind of considered like, the grandfather of functional blood chemistry. It's like,
I think so.
Yeah, it's like that way. It's essentially like what you're describing, like the systems-based thinking is, in the pure sense of the word, like functional medicine. Functional medicine has morphed into a lot of different, areas, some of which I think have been beneficial, some of which are kind of beneficial
like,
only.
Oh boy.
Yeah, only to a bottom line. But I remember like reading about like Jeff Bland's experience where he's like in medical school and he's like, when are we going to learn how to actually like solve these problems that people are having? And they were literally like, you're in the wrong place. Like, that's not how we do things here.
Yeah. Reed Davis is the similar story,
Reed
not
Davis,
a background
is that
in,
you said?
Yeah, it was a functional FMD. Is that right? Functional medicine diagnostics, I think. I could have got the name wrong, but
I didn't wanted to make sure I heard you right. I just am not
that
person.
Yeah. One of the other big functional medicine areas. It was one, he's been doing it for a long time, but his background wasn't in medicine, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, he had a different view of it. Okay, let's talk about the thing that I mean, this is awesome. I love this. It's like why we do the podcast, is just to like talk through cool stuff. So I saw the email, the cool subject line. I know you have this course. You're like, you have different like launch dates for your courses. So right now, say the name, I want to make sure I say it right, because I know you have like an intro course that's free. That's like cardio for meatheads, but this is the flexible cardio meathead course.
Yeah, we had this as a short like 1 hour video. I think I did for Allie Gilbert. And then the course is flexible meathead cardio. And there's a level 1, and then the level 2 will be out in mid-August when people are listening to this.
Awesome.
And so level 1 is all just aerobic training, which is like old school, basic base building, kind of what you consider classic kind of cardio. And then level 2 is more of the anaerobic conditioning, more of the sprinting, the more high intensity, like all the stuff that's kind of more, I'd say kind of sexy now. And obviously you've got like the Tabata protocol that's been around forever, which is based off of one study, which we can talk about if we want. But you know, like I realized I initially designed them to do one course, because I'm just like, initially all the way back in the Flex Diet Cert, I wanted to put in a whole section on cardiovascular training, but I limited myself to 1 hour for exercise. And so I just have very, very basic stuff in there, because I couldn't figure out like how else to get it in there other than like, it's important, you should do it. Here's a basic template of how to do it, you know? And then as I was doing the course, I realized, oh crap, like a lot of these people have not taken any physiology at all, and nor would I expect them to take any physiology. And so I realized no one really teaches the protocols and the principles in the same course. So I'm like, yes, I'll give you the exact protocols I've used. A lot of them have been very effective. I've been doing this with clients, like just cardio specific training for 8+ years. And if you do exercise phys, like you get beat over the head with cardiovascular stuff, like just nonstop all the time, all the way back to A.V. Hill from like 1923. It was like 100 years of cardiovascular stuff. So I wanted to have it be principle based and give people the protocols and have it based on the research. So when they're done, they're like, oh, I get this protocol, but when I did it with myself or my clients, ooh, this is a little bit too much. So I know what parameter to kind of tweak, because no protocol is ever going to fit everyone 100%. Sure. But you can get pretty close, and then you understand the concept of, oh, okay, if I really want to push VO2 max, I need to do more intense intervals, and that's what I need to do. And they're not recovering from these intervals, so I need to do more basic stuff again. Or their heart rate goes up super high, what's going on with that? Or here's how to do an assessment. So trying to make it very useful at the end of the day, but trying to give them some principles of it also, so they can understand what to do.
So would you say, I mean, let's talk about this. I want to dive into this, but I'm also like personally interested in this course. Is it more for trainers, clinicians, and like that? Or can people take it who don't have a background? They just are like, want to, like, the reason one, I was really attracted to it is because I want to train a way where I increase my VO2 and kind of get that max, you know, like a little bit higher.
Yeah.
And so can people take it that just have that general interest?
Yep. So I did set it up a little bit more for trainers, but we started all the way back with just like the very basic principles, because I realized even with trainers, like a lot of them, if they did a formal path and exercise phys, like they would definitely get all the concepts, but a lot of them didn't. You know, a lot of them are taking certifications, and there's a lot of good certifications, a lot of horrible certifications too. And even if you're, I'd say, more of a fitness enthusiast, like 40% of people who buy the course are just fitness enthusiasts. Yeah. Like I think it's useful to understand like the principles, because you can tweak it yourself. Right. Like you can know, okay, man, I really started here. This is a good starting point. I probably got like 80%, but oh, now week 8, how do I change it? How do I modify it? Now I'm on week 12. Now I'm on week 52. Like you'll learn what are the progressions, what are the regressions, why you're doing it, what are some of the benefits. And so that's why it took the longest time was I started all the way back with like just simple, like what's cardiac output? Cardiac output's heart rate times stroke volume. Oh shit, what's stroke volume? You know, like pretty, you know, I'd say kind of basic stuff, but a lot of stuff that people don't have or don't know. But then you can kind of build on that and go, oh, well, why don't I just do metcons? Like, why are you yammering on about all this aerobic stuff? Oh, because the stroke volume will change. Why does stroke volume change? Oh, because you might get changes to adaptation in the cardiac tissue. Why do you get those changes? Because if you're metconing yourself to death with doing front squats, like your heart has to contract against a high resistance, which is different than if you're just doing cardiac stuff on a bike. So yes, your heart rate is elevated, but it's not the same thing physiologically at all, which is one of my pet peeves. And metcons are great. Like there's a time and a place to do them, but they don't solve all the cardiovascular issues as much as everybody tells you that they do.
Okay, and so this is like, would you say what like the full name of what metcon is for people?
Yeah, so metcon is a metabolic conditioning, and it's basically lift weights faster.
Yeah. Okay. And so this is the thing that I think really like, I had no idea about this, but it's like why this course is important, especially for somebody. It's going to be all about me today.
Yeah, that's good. Great. Perfect.
Somebody like me. So because I'm like, you know, like the muscle mommy trend is huge right now where it's and we've been told as women, like, hey, you know, we talked about this a little bit before the episode, but for like, you know, whatever the past 20 years, like the stereotype of like the woman in the leotard with the like sweatbands and she's like doing the aerobic training or running, you know, it's like we've been so aerobic based for so long. And now we're like, oh crap, resistance training, weightlifting, you know, and he's picking up heavy stuff. That's what Andrew calls it here. He's like, pick up the heavy stuff and then set it back down and then pick it back up and set it back down. Actually, that is really important. It makes you feel really good, but it's almost like the trend has flipped. So now a lot of women that I know, and I think probably a lot of people, men too, but I talk to a lot of girlfriends, we're mainly resistance training. And like, I might go on walks or, you know, like do like really like zone 1, zone 2, you know, low heart rate, can sustain it forever and forever type of aerobic training. But I really kind of like always think like, oh, well, if I'm doing like kettlebell swings or like you're saying, I'm doing like I did a set today of like, I did like burpee, deadlifts, front squats, and then like basically like skater jumps. It's like, that should count, right? You know, like I'm lifting weights and my heart rate, like it's through the roof. But the part of this that was surprising to me is that, you know, I like saw your content about this and I was like, oh, that's not the same actually. So can you just talk about that a little bit more? Because I think that's where this course and where this information might be surprising to people because they think they're like, my heart rate's getting up. That is aerobic conditioning, but it's actually not.
Yeah. And it's super confusing. Should women lift weights? Yes, 100%. Like, should everyone lift weights? Yes, 100%. Yeah. Like, we're not saying don't lift weights. Should you do some cardiovascular conditioning? Yes. You know, you get all these stupid questions like, I want to lose weight. What do I do? Lift weights or cardio? Both. Like, you don't have to pick one, right? They both have really huge benefits. They're just different benefits. Mm-hmm. And shocker, physiologically, you need both. You need to do both. So a metcon or metabolic conditioning is just lift weights faster. Mm-hmm. And people are like, oh, well, that's cardio because my heart rate, it goes super high.
That's what I thought.
Your heart rate does go high. Like, do you see some benefits from doing that? Yes, you do. However, can you substitute a metcon for what I would say is old school classic aerobic conditioning? I would say no. So metcons are kind of like their own thing. They're like, if we've got like lifting on one end, like aerobic stuff on the other end, like metcon is like another thing kind of in the middle between the two. And the difference, usually if you go all the way back to like, what is your heart doing? Because people go, oh, well, your heart rate's elevated. So your heart rate is the thing of how hard your heart is working. So it's got to be the same. But if you look, like what I was saying, if you're front squat, and let's say you're doing reps of 10 or 20 or doing thrusters or whatever, as you're doing that, you have a lot of muscular work, but you have a lot of high tension, especially in the upper arms and the rest of the musculature. And so the heart, its whole job is to just get oxygenation to the muscle and, more important, to the brain. Mm-hmm. So the heart says, okay, great. You can think of the analogy of van. So vein, artery, nerve. They usually run almost like right next to each other in pretty much all your physiology. There's places where they divert a little bit, but most of physiology, they're next to each other. And they're running between a lot of, shocker, the muscles. And so when you contract really, really hard, you're squishing them because they run next to it. The heart goes, oh, these are getting kind of squished, but, well, that doesn't matter. I still have to get blood through it. So it'll increase what's called the afterload pressure, the amount of the heart has to create, because it still has to get blood to go through there, and it has to get to the brain, and ideally it gets to the muscles. So you have a high amount of what's called afterload, this pressure the heart has to contract. And when you do that, you can have changes in the structure of the heart. If you do this a lot and you're on the extreme end of the spectrum, because the heart is dealing with this high pressure situation and it needs more muscular force in order to do that. Mm-hmm. But the heart can't expand out. It's stuck in this fibrous sac. And so it can only really expand if the chambers get bigger by going in. So if the muscle gets bigger with just hypertrophy, it's the chamber size actually gets a little bit smaller. And there's whole lines of, pathology. It used to be called like HOCM or hyperobstructive cardiac myopathy. I think they changed it now to just, obstructive. I can't remember what they changed the term, but you end up with a smaller chamber size. So, but now you can't get as much blood in there. So now you have less blood coming back to the heart because the chamber size is smaller. If you go to the other end of the spectrum and you go, okay, let's just go on a bike and let's just do zone 2 or 3. We're going to do the Tour de France prep and we're going to ride bikes for 200 miles or whatever. And I was a helper person with the Race Across America at one point. So start in San Diego, pedal your ass to, Atlantic City with 4 people. Like, that was a story for another time. I was not one of the riders. I was just the support person, and it's 24/7. So someone's riding their ass like 24/7. On that end of the spectrum, you don't have a lot of afterload, right? You've got some tension in your hands, but most of the blood is running through your legs. Your legs are the primary muscle that's working. So now you have the inverse. You have a huge amount of blood coming back to the heart that has a high amount of what's called preload. So preload will cause the ventricles to stretch a little bit to get a more better alignment of the actin and myosin, the contracting portion, or what's called the Frank-Starling principle. So if you get a little bit more of stretch in the cardiac system, you do get a more efficient contraction. So in those extreme cases, again, you have to do hundreds and hundreds of miles per week. Sure. You can actually have a thinning of the wall, because the wall doesn't need to do high pressure. It just needs to get a lot of blood in and get a lot of blood out. And when it's contracting, it's not contracting against a high pressure. So it doesn't need a whole lot of force. And so you've got one extreme end of old school classic aerobic stuff. You've got the other extreme end of powerlifting, doing a 2 or 3 RM where like my heart rate, my blood pressure is jacked up through the roof. Massive amount of cardiac contraction. Yeah. And so you, shocker, want to end up somewhere in the middle, right? And if you look at high level rowers, for whatever reason, no one's 100% sure, they have massive cardiac outputs. They're relatively strong for their size, and they don't seem to have any major cardiac issues really at all. Because if you start getting the chamber too big and you have too much high pressure, one of the things the heart will do is start having scar tissue form, because scar tissue is really, really strong. It's going, hey, wait a minute. We have this massive amount of pressure that's going through here all the time. We need to sort of make this a little bit stronger. Scar tissue is not electrically conductive, and now you can start having electrical problems and other stuff too. Yeah. Now, again, do most of those things actually happen?
It's extreme.
No.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, you have to be on the very extreme end. But it's just explaining that the modalities that both increase heart rate, but the mechanisms that underlie and underpin it are actually completely different from one another. So they're not the same thing. You can't just use heart rate as a marker of, oh, my heart rate went up, so I checked the box on aerobic stuff, I'm good to go.
I've been doing that for years. So
I did it. When
I read that the first time, I mean, I think, Dr. Mike, it's like, this is just like news for most people. It's like, it's a really important point also, because especially in functional medicine or integrative medicine, we tend to forget that cardiovascular disease kills more people than anything else.
Yep.
We like have this huge focus, which is needed, right, on the kind of like the diseases that get ignored in conventional medicine, like autoimmune disease or chronic fatigue and these like silent Lyme and like that. And it's like, that's needed. Yeah, we need help with that. But like at the end of the day, we're still dying from heart disease. So to have this information, and to me, just feels important. Also, in like getting a little older, I'm like thinking about my heart, have family history, like, all of these things. So it's like one of those kind of like boxes where it's like, I don't know if you went through this phase, but I'm guessing a lot of our listeners did, where it's like you put butter on everything and you like learn, because you learned saturated fat is like not as bad as they said, but then you like totally overblow it. And I actually remember like Andrew and I lived in Tahoe for years, and it snows like crazy, and it's the Sierra cement and it's hard to shovel. Like you probably get like metcon for shoveling that snow.
Shoveling metcons.
And I came inside one day, I think I'd been shoveling, it would snow like feet in a day. I'd been shoveling all day. And I was like, Andrew, I think I'm having a heart attack. Like, I know that people have heart attacks from shoveling.
Oh yeah.
And I've been shoveling all day, and I think I was wrong about this saturated fat thing. I actually just like pulled, like some intercostal muscle or whatever. But, it's like, it does start to come up when it's like, oh, wait, you can't eat, a pat of butter with every bite of your baked potato. And you should probably get some aerobic exercise in, to stay healthy all over, but definitely to keep your heart healthy, like you're saying. And yeah, with that kind of growing trend of resistance training in women, I think it's like, I think about it more because I'm a woman, but it's like particularly important to understand this concept, because we don't want to just rely on resistance or our heart rate getting high in that exercise. We do need that balance. So
yeah. And you could make an argument that, and again, this is based off of just a couple studies, and there's a lot more pushback on these studies now. And then the counter argument is valid to some degree. But Peter T has talked a lot about this. My friend Dr. Rhonda Patrick's talked about this too, that if I get the numbers right, I'm pretty sure that if you compare the lowest tier to the highest tier, so you're very untrained, very low VO2 max, you compare it to, in their study, like the athlete or the elite level, which I can't remember what their cutoffs are. I want to say it was above 50, I know, for VO2 max. But the hazard ratio is 5.
It's very high.
5, which for listeners, smoking cessation, I believe, is a hazard ratio of 1.2 to 1.6.
And you're talking about for all-cause mortality?
For all-cause mortality. Yes, correct. 100%.
Yeah.
So yes, should you stop smoking? Yeah, you should. Should you, if you were to pick smoking or have a wicked high VO2 max versus a low VO2 max, it absolutely blows smoking out of the water.
Yeah, statistically, I think it's really important, though, what you're saying. It's like when you read more and more papers and you pay attention to the magnitude stats, which it's like you're talking about like how strong the connection is between all-cause mortality and exercise, or all-cause mortality and smoking. You don't see a hazard ratio that high very often.
No, that is, I think, one of the highest hazard ratios I think I have ever seen.
Yeah. So basically what we're saying in plain English is like, you need to exercise somehow, and ideally some combination of like kind of classic cardio training and picking up heavy stuff and then putting that heavy stuff down and picking it back up again. That's like the bottom line.
Yeah. I mean, the simplest template I've used for years and years is go lift stuff Monday, Wednesday, Friday, do some cardio Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday, take Sunday off, do a long walk, do some zone 2, do your food prep, whatever. Like if you just did that, and that's all you did, like,
it's amazing.
You would actually do really well. Now we can split hairs and talk about if you want to optimize certain areas, fine. But if you just did that, and I would say maybe an hour a day, and that's probably on the high end, like you could see a ton of benefit from 20 minutes a day doing that.
Sure.
But again, I'm a little bit more fan of frequency. But if you think in your head, could I eventually at some point get up to, a half hour to an hour per day, most days per week, like the benefits from it are just astronomical.
Yeah. It's so interesting. Again, Andrew and I talk about this all the time because he's a trainer. I've been focused on nutrition, and I'm a Pilates teacher, which nobody knows. I just don't really talk about it because it's pole star Pilates. Everybody thinks I'm a pole dancing teacher, which is not the case. But we have these very close interests. So we talk about this stuff a lot. And it's it's so interesting that people get drawn to the supplements or the fancy machine or the new trend or this and that. And it's if they would basically just eat pretty middle of the road food, try to eat food that's food, and then move their body, it covers so much. But there's this weird, it's some people just can't even get there, especially with movement. And so I think it's important to say, what you just said, if you only have 20 minutes, do 20 minutes. It will absolutely make a difference. And you don't have to make it fancy.
My pet peeve is the biohackers that look like a strong wind would take them out and probably can't deadlift their body weight, and they have a VO2 max probably in the 20s, and they're wondering where I should shove the red light. Yeah. It's bro, you just need to train first.
Yeah, just pick up some 10-pound dumbbells.
I'm not saying you have to be super strong or have a really high VO2 max, but
something, yeah.
Something, come on.
The thing that I keep thinking, when we're talking about this balance is we had to chase after the animal. And that's actually, it's this incredible way of understanding humans, in comparison to other animals. We have this insane ability for endurance and
for subsistence hunting and stuff. Yeah.
And then you have to drag this heavy ass animal and all of the meat and the bones and the skin and everything back. It is both. That's aerobic and resistance right there. So yeah, we, evolved for this balance. Okay, so I kind of want to ask you, are there any differences that, like, if we do want to split hairs, is there anything that like females should focus on over males? Like kind of,
good question.
Let's talk about that.
So I tried to go through as much of the literature as I was doing the course as I could. There is some older data showing that women might be a little bit better at using fat. In the process of reviewing that literature, because I think it is kind of true, but I think those studies were based off of women generally had a lower VO2 max than males. So I think it might be more VO2 max related and not necessarily gender. So I have some doubts about some of those early studies that were done. And there was one study that came out that looked at gender differences with cardiovascular training. I do have a whole module in the course on it. The takeaway was women might be a little bit more protected and they may not have to do as much cardio as men. Now, that was like one study. It has some caveats, but it was pretty. Now, maybe that's because historically males have done more weight training. Maybe there was some bias they weren't correcting for. Again, there could be some other stuff, but I thought that was interesting. So if you are a female, you might be able to skate by a little bit more by doing less cardiovascular training, at least based on that study.
Interesting. Okay. And that actually just makes me think of like, there's like this one study talking about Tabata. So actually, I think I know the Tabata pattern. It's like you do like, we've always done like 20 seconds on, 10 seconds off for, is it 8 rounds? So you
I think they did 6 to 8.
6 to 8.
If I remember. Yeah, I can't
remember. And it's like a pretty popular way for like fitness classes to be run and like that. So this isn't necessarily like about, sex differences, but are you saying like, yay Tabata, or like it's kind of questionable? Like what's the deal?
I have to do a whole article. I am going to do a whole video on Tabata for level 2. So it was done as one study. It was designed for athletes not to complete all the rounds. So if you look in the literature, if you're doing a 1-to-1 ratio of work to rest, and you're more on the anaerobic, you're on the short duration time stuff. So let's do the classic Wingate. 30 seconds on, 30 seconds off. Absolutely freaking miserable and brutal. If you can do, in my opinion, 10 rounds of that, and your output does not drop much from the first round to the last round by more than 10%, and this is at a moderate output on an assault bike or a rower, to me, that's borderline elite level. That is very, 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 very good. And that's a 1-to-1 ratio. Tabata is the inverse. So you're doing 20 seconds of work for 10 seconds of rest. So now you have what's called incomplete rest entirely. And so it was set up as a way to have athletes not complete it. And if you look, like most of the benefits occurred within the first couple of weeks, which I think is probably more peripheral adaptations, more so than anything else, which you could argue about, is that really even a true cardiovascular adaptation or not? We can debate that later. But the other biggest part that everybody misses on that is that, if I remember correctly, the intensity, and I believe it was on a bike, was 170% of their VO2 max. 170% of their VO2 max. So if my math is correct, if you did a 2K on the rower and your output for, let's say, an 8-minute 2K was 200 watts, right? You'd be 340 watts then. Did I do my math right?
Oh my God, Dr. Mike, I am the opposite person.
Yeah, ridiculously
intense.
High output.
Yeah, extremely intense exercise.
And to get that output, you are going to be limited to what modality you can do it on. You cannot do one-arm preacher curls for Tabatas. You just cannot elicit 170% of a VO2 max response with almost any exercise modality, the exception being a bike, assault bike, versa climber, rower. If you're highly trained, running, but most people are not trained enough to do those types of velocities or those types of things. That's about it.
Yeah.
So if anybody says they're doing Tabata and it's not one of those modalities, I always know this is just crap.
Yeah, it's just like a way to move your body. It's not actually following the real model. And
right. And anyone who's tried to do that at that intensity, to hold that intensity, it is ridiculously hard.
Yeah. I mean, it's easy to like sit here and say it, but it's like when you actually get on a rower or, I mean, God, like you're saying, anything where you even have that capability, first of all, but then secondly, to try and maintain that would be very hard. Okay. I'm going to have to tell Andrew about that because he loves Tabata. He taught like his group X classes would sometimes be like that model. But I think it's also, I mean, and you tell me if this is correct or not, it may not be. When you have a group of people who are just trying to like get in there 45 minutes or an hour, it is better than nothing, but it's not like true Tabata.
Oh, sure. But yeah, just call it something else.
Yeah,
because
totally.
if you take untrained people, the other part that I know is, hey, I did this Tabata class. It was 45 minutes.
No, you didn't.
No, you didn't. Like,
Are you
may call it Tabata class, but that's just a bunch of heinous work you're doing. And I guarantee if we watch your output, it's like
going down,
off a cliff. And then you have to ask, okay, so now I'm putting in all this effort. Am I really getting the adaptation I want? And I would argue in that case, no. Right? You are putting out a lot of effort. So yay, you get, great star points for, gonadal fortitude. Woohoo! Yeah. But in terms of adaptation, not so much, because at the end of the day, it's the adaptation you want that's going to drive long-term performance and body comp changes. Mm-hmm. Like, especially in fitness, everybody assumes it's body comp only. And even if you want better body comp, if you just increase your VO2 max, like, you are just burning through more calories and everything else is more submax at that point. So you want, in my opinion, the adaptation from doing the exercise, and the calories you burn is a side effect.
Totally.
Like, there are rare exceptions where, yes, I have physique athletes where we are just doing some low intensity stuff. They're 6 weeks out from their show. It's primarily more of a caloric burn. I get it. There's those rare exceptions. But in the off season, like, we're trying to push their VO2 max like higher than what it was. Mm-hmm. Now, again, that's not their number one goal, but I know that they can absorb more stress when they have to cut their calories and they have to do more work. Mm-hmm. Like, they're able to, recovery is better. They're able to train with more volumes. They get more of a hypertrophic response. So it makes a big difference, but you can't do that 10 weeks out from your show. Mm-hmm. Right. So even in the extreme case where, body composition is the only thing that you're graded on, like, the adaptations you get are still like super important.
Yeah. Okay. I hope people are getting this. It's like, this is maybe like a little higher level than like how Hannah and I usually.
Yeah.
I mean, I think that the important takeaway is like move. Number one, move in a way that like get your heart rate up without weights, and in a way that uses weights, heart rate or not, maybe some in the middle. But it is cool to explore these different caveats, because there are people who have been training and it's like they are shooting for some goal. And I think it's what you're saying is particularly interesting. It's like, make sure that like you really are doing the movement for the goal that you want to achieve. It's like, for some people, the goal is like they just want to be able to eat like pizza and not feel like, a slob. It's like, okay, totally good. That's great. But like, if you do want to like build muscle and burn fat, or if you do want to increase your VO2 max, like if you do want to like really shoot for living a longer, more functional life, there are certain ways that you can do that. And that's essentially what you teach.
Yeah. I mean, I had a guy 12 years ago, I was training people in person. He's like, all right, I'm gonna be honest. You're going to hate me for this. Here's my goal. I'll be pretty good nutrition wise Monday through Friday, but on the weekend, I literally want to eat pizza and drink beer. He's like, I'll do whatever it takes during the week and maybe Saturday morning, but after that, that's it. Done, and I'm like, we can do that.
Yeah.
Your Monday through Friday is going to suck ass. Like, you're going to do a lot of work, but you did it. Like, and his goal wasn't to get shredded, but he maintained his body weight, and he would eat like a whole pizza and have 3 beers on Saturday night. And, that was his deal. Like, he didn't want to give that up. That was his little teddy bear. I'm like, great.
Yeah.
But here's what you're going to have to do in order to do that.
Totally. Yeah. Gosh, at least he was honest. I feel
he was honest. Most people are not.
Totally. That's exactly right. Most people are not, or they just have never even thought about it. So I think that's a good thing too with this conversation is like, if you have never thought about what your goal is for moving, maybe your goal is just to move your body. And that is where you need to shoot for, because you're currently not. Awesome. Start doing that. But if you are exercising and you haven't really thought through like, well, why, like what is the outcome? What could the outcome be? You can really take certain steps to live longer. You can take certain steps to make sure your heart rate is incredibly healthy, to have more muscle mass on your body, versus fat mass. It's like, there are some goals that are absolutely achievable. You just have to kind of like act in a certain way. It's important. And kind of to continue our conversation, it's like maybe there are some differences in females versus males. It is, I wanted to touch on this a little bit in our conversation. Like, it is kind of trendy right now to really hear about like there are these huge differences between males and females with what they need as far as like their training goes, their eating patterns, even like their hydration, like so many different points, for males versus females. Do you want to speak to that a little bit?
Sure. God, I'm going to get so much hate mail for this.
Oh no.
My bias is I don't think there's that many differences. Now, the massive caveat is, are there differences between genders? Of course there is. Are there different hormones? Yes. Is there physiologic difference percent? Mm-hmm. And you could very rightly argue, and I would 100% agree, we have way too little data on women. But 100%, I agree with you. The data we have so far, which again is very limited, in general, it would say there's not that much difference. And like I train mostly, this is the most amount of males I think I've ever trained in my life. Like most of my clients historically are like 70% female, even though I write to like dudes in the newsletter.
Yeah, but we love it.
Do I train them particularly different? No, but I'm doing a customized approach per individual. So I would love for them to have enough data to say, oh my gosh, if you're a woman, you definitely need more protein or higher fat or less carbs or whatever the crazy ass thing going around on the internet is now. I want that to be true because I would sell the ever living shit out of that and have way more clients if it was true, right? And maybe someday it'll turn out to be true. But historically, what I've noticed is I don't do a lot of differences. And I've talked to pretty high level coaches with pretty high level professional athletes, and I don't see huge differences of how they train women versus men. Now, again, relative strength levels and all that stuff are going to be different, like structure, like what are you training for your sport, all that stuff is different, but you would customize that per person, per athlete anyway.
Right.
And so that's my biggest thing is like, yes, still do a customized approach 100%. But you're going to measure it. You're going to measure their VO2 max. You're going to look at body comp. If they're weak and they want to get stronger, you're still going to lift heavy shit. Like if they want to increase their VO2 max, we know what principles work to do that. Like Stu Phillips' lab has even put out two studies now looking at should you train around your cycle. And I tried doing that with women 10 years ago, and it was a disaster because are there differences that happen during the cycle? %.
Yeah, we don't want to do shit, Dr. Mike.
Train enough women where you don't want to train and you will have physiologic differences. 100% there is. Could I ever figure out enough pattern that I would do wholesale radical changes to their program? No, but every freaking conversation I had was about it. And I'm like, you're just not getting enough volume. Like you are missing all these big rocks that we know will drive adaptation. And we're worrying about some smaller things that we're not really sure. And again, back to high level professional athletes. I know a fair amount of female athletes, even in team sports. I can't even name you one right now that will train them per their cycle. Now, again, you could argue that could be logistics. It could be how they're set up. It could be the team dynamic, whatever, maybe. Again, not to say that there's not physiologic differences, but when you're doing a customized approach, we would account for that anyway. I have some women who are like, okay, it's this time of the month, it's always the third week, my body weight goes up by about 2 or 3 pounds, everyone responds different. Great. So I would know for her during that week, she may be in a caloric deficit, but because she has more fluid retention at that time, I'm not going to make any decisions about her calories because I know the fluid is impacting the scale weight and I don't know what's going on. So I'm going to wait till the next week when that goes away. Wow, she's down about a pound before, or she's almost the same as what she was. So I'm still taking it into account. We're still talking about it, but most of them will just tell you like how they are. And again, we're going to grade it on their performance anyway. If their performance was bad and it was not a good session, great. We'll flip your resistance training and your cardio, or maybe we'll have you do a lighter day or cut your volume. So we are going to account for it, but I don't think you can do it enough to be predictive in the future to always say, unless you've got enough historical data. And that's happened with a few women where historically, like everything's like clockwork. Okay, we know this is going to be a lighter week. Great. We have historical data to base it on. Perfect. But a lot of times it's not that perfect in reality.
No, definitely
it's
not.
messy, and you're back to auto-regulating on that particular day, which my bias is if you're working with, athletes or even general population, you would want to do anyway. Anyway, that's my little tirade.
No, it's good. I mean, I've seen, conversations on both sides where it's like, okay, and then I've had my own personal experience where it's like, you need to kind of change fueling, you know, in the luteal phase. You need to like think about temperature differences in the luteal phase. I've kind of wondered, and I'm curious your opinion on this, like, is there, because there is, you know, not much data on females, do you think that there's like an anecdotal experience maybe that like some coaches are having like with their team or with people who like specifically need that kind of support where they like seek out, you know, practitioners that work in that way? And so, you know, I'm not high level enough to have really a personal experience that means anything, but I do know, you know, it's like, the week before Menzies, everything feels hard. I crave more salt. I crave more carbohydrate, you know, so there's like differences there, but I'm not tracking metrics. I don't have that data to really back it. It's just, to me, it's like an interesting thing to think about. And, you know, somebody like you know, and having conversations about people who work with females who are high level, you have seen like, you know, okay, like maybe there isn't that much of a difference, seems a lot more accurate.
Yeah. My thing is, I don't think most people I've ever worked with, or even most high level athletes I've even worked with or talked to other coaches, I don't think they're so dialed in down to a gnat's ass that whether they're in their luteal phase or not matters.
Yeah.
And then I'll ask them, like, if you're a competitive athlete, you don't get to decide what part of your cycle and when you compete. So what do you do then?
Yeah.
Like, oh, shit. You know, like, okay, if it's general population, I get it. You have a little bit more flexibility. But do you just do not compete that day? Well, that's not an option. So we got to figure out some workarounds at some point anyway. I mean, if I had no ethics, I'd be like, yeah, my customized super secret squirrel program will look at your cycle and we'll map you out a whole year. And this will be the greatest thing you've ever done in your entire life, because as a woman, you know, all these things matter and I'm taking into account and I'm listening to everything that you've got going on. I have this super secret thing, the silver bullet that's going to solve all your issues. And I think this is all bullshit.
Yeah.
You know, but everybody wants they want to feel like they're a special snowflake. I'm paying you a shitload of money.
Yeah.
I want you to tell me that I'm special, that I'm all that different. And again, you can do that when you customize it per person. So, yes, I'm still doing that. I'm doing all of that, but I can't tell you that I'm doing it based on, you know, the luteal phase of this or that or whatever. It's going to get worse because there are some metrics, like Aura's got one now using body temp and things like that are pretty darn accurate. So we'll have a better idea where people are in their cycle. And maybe we'll find, you know, a year from now, I'll be like, oops, I was completely wrong. Like, wow, there is some big changes that happen here. Great. If there is, cool, I'll do it. I don't care.
Yeah.
You know, but right now...
Yeah, you don't see it.
And I sometimes feel bad for female athletes because it's one other thing that they have to get through all the silly noise. And it's like, dude, I've seen, even like with elite level athletes, like I've seen what you actually eat. I had 2 top track athletes that were college athletes, were 2 of the fastest humans probably in the US at this time. They sent me their nutrition logs many years ago, and I thought their coach was playing a joke on me. They were horrible, like way under calories, no micronutrition, very little protein, like just everything was a floating trash bin fire. But yet they eventually didn't work with me because they're like, hey, we run this fast, we eat this bad, we don't care.
Right. And they're also like, you said they were collegiate athletes. It's like, I just can imagine like. Yeah.
And I'm thinking like, on one hand, I'm like, amazed you've done that well with what you have. That is just phenomenal. On the other hand, I'm like, you could probably be like Olympic competitor material if you even just ate enough calories.
Yeah. Of anything.
You know? And so a lot of the basics are still just being missed. And I think it's because everybody wants myself included. Like, I want to know there's some supplement that'll increase my output by 20% or, you know, whatever. Like, we all look for those things and I kind of want to believe them, but most of the time I'm just sorely disappointed.
Yeah. That's exercise, is that supplement.
Yeah, that's exercise. Nothing's going to replace the basics. And what I tell clients is like, once you're executing on all those, like, we'll go as deep and as fine tooth as you want. Like, I got all sorts of shit you can do. Trust me. You're never going to run away from that. But you have to understand that as you do that, you are getting down to 10%, 9%, 1%, 0.5%
impact.
And yeah, if you're at an elite level, those things matter. But to the average person, at what point is the trade-off? At what point is the 0.5% worth more time to you, more expense, more pain in the ass? Because there's always a cost associated on the back end. Like, I know for myself right now, because of projects I have going on, like, Yeah, I have no problem lifting and doing exercise like 12 to 15 hours a week when I'm home. Like, that's cool. Like, for my goals, like, that's fine. My nutrition's normally okay. But am I significantly leaner than what I have been in the past? No. Am I worried about it right now? No. Because I know the cost I would have to pay to get significantly leaner. And I'm not fat, I'm not obese, my health parameters are fine, blood work is fine. There's no warning signs that other than look kind of fluffy in the mirror, you know, that type of thing.
Yeah.
But I know the cost I would have to pay to do that, and to add that on top of everything else right now, something would have to go. And I'm okay just kind of riding it out. Performance is the main driver of what I'm doing anyway. You know, at some point that might change. You know, you get to a certain point, you're like, oh boy, okay, I'm going to start to cut back a little bit now.
Yeah.
Right. But you only learn that after having done there and been there, that you know what the cost is. If you haven't done that and you don't have the experience, you're like, oh, well, I want to increase my aerobic capacity, lift heavier stuff, and I want to be like, you know, lose a lot of weight when I do it. Yeah, if you're new, you can kind of make progress in those areas. But after you've been doing it for a while, you have to really kind of prioritize what is the number one thing. Here's what we're going to do. We'll do this for 6, 8, 12 weeks, and then we'll shift to here. No, you're not going to get completely out of shape. No, you're not going to be a marshmallow man, or you're not going to gain a ton of fat. We'll keep an eye on it.
Yeah. But
you kind of have to keep the goal, like what Dan Don says. Like, the goal is to keep the goal. And it's really hard to do when you've got social media like showing you all the Photoshop things, and we'll just take this whatever
every supplement
known to man and this crazy thing and shove the red light up your ass, whatever you're trying to do. And there might be a time and a place for all those things, but they're usually more in the minority of the things that you need to be doing.
It really comes back to what is going to have the greatest impact.
Yep.
And so many times the biggest impact is going to come from the thing that is not super sexy, marketed, the coolest thing you've ever heard of. It's like, you need to move and you need to eat well and you need to drink water and you need to get good sleep. It's like, they're not super fancy, shiny things, but they work so well. That's the problem. You know, it's like we get very marketed to with these shiny objects, and they move the needle like 1% unless you have a very specific case. I feel like that's what I kind of hear you say like over and over that resonates with me. It's like, yeah, we can really get specific with exercise. That's amazing, but you just need to exercise. Like before
you need to, it's like do first, then refine.
Yes.
You know, like it just, you're never going to have the optimal plan. Like, optimal doesn't exist. Like, if you gave me $4 million to test the optimal plan for aerobic capacity, you can't do it. There's a question you can never answer. I could answer, is protocol A better than protocol B? I can answer that in a population. We could even enroll more women in the study, which would be great. We could get an answer to that on that population for those parameters. But people are just looking for this mythical optimal thing. And it's like, just the better question is, okay, what is better?
Yeah.
If I add some cardio to my current program, will I be better? Yes, you will. Should I lift heavy things, at least 2 to 3 days a week? Yes, you will be better. Should I eat mostly real food? Yes, you will be better, right? So if you just focus on better, at some point you will get to that mythical kind of optimal thing.
Yeah, totally. I love that. Okay, one more question before you go.
Yeah, you're good.
Is there any difference that you've seen in the research literature about like what is a good amount of protein for women? What's the deal with that? Because like right now, everything on the internet is cottage cheese. Like maybe I'm even made of cottage cheese right now, and you don't even know because I've become like this sentient cottage cheese being. So I'm curious, like, what do you know about that?
From what I've seen, I haven't seen a lot of studies that have looked at gender differences, but if I put words in the mouth, like talking to people like Stu Phillips, my buddy Dr. David Church, and people who research protein and amino acids and all this stuff, like, I'm not convinced there's enough data to say there's any gender difference at all. Now, might that change? Maybe. Can I point to a study that's even just looked at gender differences? I can't think of one offhand, but there have been sub-analyses. There have been women who have been in other studies. So it has been studied, not exclusively. I can't think of a mechanism of why it would be completely different. There may be some acute tracer study work that might be a little bit different, but in terms of chronic, like intervention type studies, I still go back to 0.7 grams per pound of body weight. So if you're 100 pounds, that's only 70 grams of protein. If you're 200 pounds, it's 140 grams. Is it higher than the RDA? Oh yeah. Is it crazy high, like 1 gram per pound of body weight, no.
Yeah.
And even in the chronic studies that have been done, like I published this in a book chapter in an academic book many years ago, you're probably going to be pretty good even in the face of a massive deficit. Like some of those studies, they slash calories by like 40 or 50% overnight. The 0.7 gram group did not lose much lean body mass. And these are groups that were not necessarily training, they're recreationally active. But the 0.5 gram per pound of body weight did lose lean body mass. So we do know that, especially in the wake of a caloric deficit, especially if you're not lifting, you do cut your protein, you will lose lean body mass. Like that's been pretty well established. That's not going to be in your favor. Is it a astronomical amount? No. How much does lifting protect it? We sadly don't really know. It's probably very, very protective. But to what degree, we don't know. And then also, if body comp is a goal, I do have people go up to 1 gram per pound of body weight, and I even had people go way above that.
It's
which is
people don't realize
crazy.
like how hard it is to eat that much protein.
That is
like,
100% true.
You're like, I just can't eat any more protein. I go back to primal days because this is the crazy thing. It is way easier to eat a pound of raw meat than it is a pound of cooked meat. For me, at least, like I can down a pound.
I've heard other people report that. Yes.
Super, super easy. I don't know what it is, but, and it like digests easier. Like the whole thing is easier, but I've shot for 1 gram per pound per day for a long time. And I just kind of make that my goal because usually I'm about, like 20 to 30 grams below that. And so I usually end up hitting about 0.7 grams per pound per day.
Yeah.
So,
and I think that's fine. I think if you get out on the hairy edge, I talked to Dr. Brandon Roberts about this, and I have experimented with very high amounts of protein. So like for myself, right now I weigh about like 235. Like I routinely will be like 320 grams a day.
oh,
And I have noticed for body recomposition, it seems to help, and I can still keep exercise performance relatively high. Now, the downside is I can only pull that off when I'm home, and it's a pain in the ass, and it took me 4 to 5 weeks to work up to that amount. So you can do what I call the AM chicken challenge. So just start with like 4 ounces of chicken breast, and then next week go to 4.5 or 5.
yeah.
Then next week go to 6, and then go to 6, just for the first meal of the day. And it is kind of shocking. Like you can get up to 9 ounces of chicken breast in one meal for most people in like 4 to 5 weeks. It's not as hard, but there is something about putting 9 ounces of chicken breast like tomorrow for your first meal that's like, man, that's not so good.
Yeah, people don't realize the impact of that until they start eating it, and they're like, wow, yeah, that's a lot of protein.
Yeah. Now, do I think most people should do that? No.
Yeah.
But if somebody came to me and said, okay, I'm already doing really well for exercise, I'm generally healthy, and my goal is to maximize body composition as best as I can while still keeping performance high, I've played around with like 1.5 grams per pound of body weight or higher.
Yeah. It's a lot of protein. I mean, I think it's something I saw in practice for years, like looking at people's food journals, is that most women did, and I mostly saw women. So my clients, they didn't eat enough protein per day.
No, not anywhere close. It's gotten a lot better over the years.
Yeah. So it's,
I went back 10 years ago. I could guarantee that any female client I had was nowhere close to their protein amount.
Yeah.
Not even in the ballpark.
So low. So yeah, I'm glad to see that, like, it's like, okay, cool. Cottage cheese, is here. Great. But to kind of like know, like, all right, 0.7 grams per pound, really adequate for physiology and for maintaining lean mass. If you want to get a little more muscle on you, shoot up for 1 gram per pound per day. And then the thing I always think about, just because like Hannah and I are totally microbiome obsessed, is like when you're doing that, make sure to get in good, colorful fiber, fruits and vegetables. It's important.
Make sure you don't destroy your GI tract.
Yeah. I think people kind of forget, and it's like, and then we see things like the carnivore diet, and it's like, oh my God, like knowing what is out there in the literature about the effect of increased protein on microbial balance. I wonder what's happening for people. I know people have great anecdotal experiences, but I'm like, feed your bugs. It's just as important as feeding yourself. You have to feed both.
Yep. Yeah, I would agree.
Yeah. Okay, Dr. Mike, anything that we missed or that you want to share? I definitely want you to tell people about this, because first of all, it's like, even if you're like, okay, I am just starting to exercise, but if you have a goal of making sure that your heart stays healthy and that you do maintain lean mass, like if you want a balance, this is wonderful. And then just your delivery, it's so practical and it's entertaining. Like you're fun to listen to. It's awesome. So I want to make sure people know about that course, or anything else you want to add before we sign off.
Yeah, thank you. And my last sales speech for the course is for women. I have lost track, and unfortunately this happens more to women than guys, although you get a lot from guys. They're like, I don't know, like I can't really seem to lose weight, like my energy levels are low, my stress feels high. And we test their VO2 max and it's really low. I remember one female client years ago, hers was technically negative. And you can't have a negative VO2 max. It just happens that the equation broke down because she was so far on the low end of the spectrum. And what was her biggest complaint? She couldn't lose weight. She was busy. She had 2 kids, had very low energy, and had already done pretty good work with sleep and nutrition, and started to do some pretty good exercise of just lifting. In 6 months, we got her up, quite a bit higher. It wasn't amazing, but she's like, oh my God. She's like, I feel so much better. I have energy to play with my kids now. I can do more things. Like cognitively, I feel better. Yeah. My training's better. That was just 6 months of, she had to work at it. She was doing 3 to 4 days of, aerobic conditioning, and she put the time in and she did really well. So I think for a lot of women who are complaining of brain fog, low energy, can't make body comp changes. Now, again, this could be a lot of different things. There's many, many things that go, but I would just throw my 2 cents in of, for God's sakes, just get an approximate VO2 max. It doesn't have to be accurate. I guarantee that if it's really low, I guarantee working on that will change a lot of stuff for much better. Again, doesn't mean you don't have other issues going on. You may or you may not, but I've lost track of how many, especially women, where it's made just like a huge difference. Because if you might be old enough to remember like the 3-cylinder Yugo cars, like a little 3-cylinder, like a little complacent squirrel on a roller skate that you just redline it to get to the grocery store. That's like your VO2 max if it's real low. Where if you have like, a Ferrari V10 or V8 engine, like everything else you do now is sub max. Therefore it is easier. Therefore you have more energy, even with everything else being the same. And last part of that is, if people want to burn more fat, just increasing your VO2 max without changing the percentages, you will literally use more fat. Why? Because you have a bigger engine that requires more gas.
Yeah.
Right. And so I think that's a component where, unfortunately, this happens with more women, is that they keep cutting calories, they keep cutting stuff. And yes, caloric deficit, yes, all that stuff works. But at some point, you feel like such dog crap that you can't do anything else anymore.
Right.
And so take a period of time, work on a building phase, lift some heavier stuff, put some time and effort into your aerobic system. If it's low, I guarantee when you go back to doing a fat loss phase again, it will be way easier. So that's my little pitch to women, because I think even women who've done cardiovascular training, it's not in a systematic way where it's increasing their VO2 max. They're doing a lot of work, they're expending a lot of effort, but if we look at the size of that engine, that aerobic engine, it's just kind of staying about neutral. And so at some point, you just need a bigger engine, and it's going to make the rest of your life much easier. Yes, it's a pain in the butt. Yes, you're going to have to work for it, like all things. But once you get it, like, you don't need nearly as much work to maintain it either. Because like once you increase strength, like, you don't need a ton of work to maintain that strength. Like acquiring it, yes, that is a much more of a process. But once you're there, then it just makes everything so much easier.
Awesome. I love it. Yeah.
So if people want more info, best place is probably the newsletter, which is MikeTNelson.com. Go to the little newsletter tab at the top. Probably like 90% of my content goes out to the newsletter. So right now we'll have level 1, level 2 is targeted to open. Right now the date is August 11th. And then we'll probably teach it again as like a live class. So the first one we recorded live, so we got a lot of good interaction as I was doing the different lectures and questions. And we've got all the protocols. We've got, I think I have like over 90 minutes of Q&A that's answered. And
awesome.
So whatever they need for it.
That's great. Yeah. And I have to say, like, you will not be disappointed in the newsletter.
Oh, thank you.
I share them all the time. Actually, I like forward them to people, but I want to make sure there's like a, if somebody forwards you this newsletter, like, to get on your list.
Oh yeah.
I'll look to see if that's on there, but God, yeah, you're a good writer. So I think it's cool to think about these concepts, but also it's important to have somebody who can like actually teach them to you in a way that's usable. And
because at the end of the day, People want to be able to do it. And if you're confused, like, you're not going to execute it.
No.
So I think it's the combination of knowing the protocol, knowing what to do, understanding the principles so you can adjust it as needed. And then you know, okay, this is the direction I'm going to go. And there is something about, I mean, I've been doing cardiovascular, like dedicated cardiovascular training for probably like 8 years now. People are like, oh, you must love your rower. I'm like, no, I kind of freaking hate the thing.
it. Yeah, totally.
But I love the way I feel after it. I love the effects from it. But there is something reassuring about knowing that every session you're doing, you know, is going towards the adaptation, that you are making progress. There's nothing worse than putting forth effort and you're like, I'm not sure if this is right. Like that sucks.
Totally. Yeah. And the progress that you're making, I mean, I just think it's so important for people to get it. It's like, it is a longer life of being functional.
Yes.
That's
an investment in your future.
Yeah, totally. Sweet. Dr. Mike, thank you so much.
Thank you.
I'm so honored that you came on, and we'll put links to, your site and like that in the show notes so everybody can check it out. Have a great one. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Bye.